Hello and welcome. Today was supposed to be a big day when I sat down and took a deep dive into Copilot in Power BI Desktop. It's been a couple of weeks since this article was posted, so I decided to put Copilot through the ringer and see how well it worked. It's also been about a month since my last review of Copilot and Power BI service, so I figured and wondered how much did the product improve and how much of it was I going to see. So I spent several hours trying to understand how hard I had to work to push Copilot to its limits. Spoiler alert, not that hard. And I think I'm left with more questions than answers as a result of this exercise. The most important question is, how does Microsoft know what good looks like in this case? In fact, this question is going to be a common theme as we're going through our review. On one hand, we're going to see Copilot do amazing things. It's going to build reports for us. It's going to answer our questions by writing DAX code. And it's going to explain our measures back to us and tell us how they work and what they do. So make no mistakes about it, the technology is genuinely amazing and it does some things really well. On the other hand, is it good enough for the target user? And how would we know? One of the things that I used to admire about working with the Power BI engineering team was the rigor of applying different personas and proper persona filter for literally every element of UI and UX in the product. The team used to be paranoid and obsessed about it. It seems to me that this rigor may have been lost a little bit because as I look at different features and capabilities of Copilot and Power BI and Fabric overall, and specifically for this review in Power BI Desktop, I can't help but think, who is the target person and who is the target persona for this feature, and what would be the right set of lenses to evaluate its usefulness and the quality of output. But enough about me talking, let's jump right in. Okay, let me make myself smaller and let's take a look at our data set. So you guys have already seen this report. We're looking at our sales analysis. After all, if our Copilot cannot do sales, what can our Copilot do, right? So let's take a look at the data set. This is actually, I think, an amazing data set to evaluate usefulness of assistance and quality of output that our Copilots do. So it's not very simple. There is several fact tables in here, but at the same time, it's very typical. No person who understands sales analytics would find anything challenging in the way this model is laid out or the type of analysis that this dataset supports. So here we have our sales table that has two scenarios, actual and budget. We have additional fact table for the market share, and we also have additional budget details in the budget export table. We have our scenario table that explains what kind of data sets we have, actual, plan, forecast. We have a product lens, we have a customer lens, we have our date, we have our salesperson, and we have our business unit. In my estimation, this would cover 90% of most sales models out there. In terms of the metrics, we have a very rich set of metrics available, lots of lenses into the cost, margin, market share, price, sales or revenue, understanding of salesperson, unit cost, unit margin, and then volume-based metrics based on units. In this video, we're going to take a look at two versions of the Copilot. First one is available in the Home ribbon right here, and the second one is in the DAX query view. So let's try the first one now. So let me make myself even smaller. Let's minimize our data and visualization panes so that we have a little bit more real estate. Well, that's actually really interesting and a positive improvement. Instead of just building something mechanically, it came back to me asking clarifying questions. Could you please provide more details about the specific aspects of customer buying patterns you're interested in? For example, are you interested in frequency of purchases, the most popular products, the time of purchase, or something else? I'm going to make it a little bit hard for this Copilot thing. I'm saying, hey, I'm interested in frequency of purchases and market basket analysis. Market basket analysis is something that's pretty difficult. Let's see how well it tackles it. So it's working on it and working on it and working on it. Now let's see, it Took it about a minute or two, actually a little longer than I expected. Overall, we're looking at customer buying patterns. Basically, this is the topic suggested by Copilot. And specifically, I said interested in frequency of purchases and market basket analysis. So the dataset actually supports market basket analysis. However, it's a sales dataset, not an order dataset. There is actually a step between somebody turning in an order and then that order becoming revenue. So that was actually a good test to understand whether Copilot understands that nuance, because I have sales information in this dataset. I do not have order information in this dataset, and it looks like this nuance was completely lost on Copilot. But let's see how well did it do the job and whether it created anything useful, period. So number one is it gave me a slicer for product name. There is a natural hierarchy in the product dimension of category, subcategory, and a product. And that natural hierarchy, anybody with any sales experience would be able to recognize and infer its usefulness. We don't see that here. So let's look at our measures. Sum of amount USD, okay. Count of customer ID, not sure how useful this is. Average amount of USD, not sure what that means. And max of product ID. So I would say that looking at these metrics at the top and thinking about how would anyone find this useful, I would say that probably nobody would. Regardless of I can't think of any lens in sales analysis in terms where sales is the domain of investigation where I would think to put these metrics to drive the rest of my report. Then we have a trend for amount USD by date. For some reason, Copilot decided not to use any of my measures. Count of customer by city, that would be interesting, but if you are giving me a city, I think that would make much more sense to show something on a map. And by the way, yes, of course, my geospatial dimensions are properly tagged. Then sum of amount by product name, average of amount by product name. So this is a really interesting analysis that it's trying to do, but I am not sure who would find this useful. So, and that goes back into my original question. Who is this for? If the persona is somebody who has no clue how to build reports, if you give me this, I am not sure that that persona would be able to take this and improve it. If the persona is Power BI developer who knows how to build reports, when they look at this, what would they do with this? Would I find it useful given my skill set and my understanding of the product? Probably no. So when I look at this, it's crazy, literally it's crazy that I could just talk to a tool and a tool just takes my questions and turns it into a visualization. For sure, super cool. At the same time, how do I know when it's good enough? Am I supposed to be impressed? How do I know that what I'm seeing here is doing what I expect it to do? But okay, maybe if I don't ask my own question, if I just follow the guided experience, maybe it'll do something more impressive. So let me click here, suggest content for this report. Let me click on that and see, maybe it'll create something much better this way. So now it came back with these options: sales performance analysis, cost and margin insight, market share examination, scenario comparison. Scenario comparison sounds interesting. Let me click on this. So this is going to create a page to compare different business scenarios in terms of sales, costs, and margin. That's pretty awesome. I have my plan, I have my actuals, so I would love to see the scenario comparison that it suggested for me to generate. Click create. Okay, so now that it created a report based on its suggested path, this is supposed to give me a scenario comparison. So here I could look at all, actual, and plan, and it's giving me the sum of amount USD. For some reason it doesn't want to use sales measure. It uses a column and effect table, and then it's using costs and margin from the measures. Then I have a trend of sales, of costs, of margin, and then a product breakdown by revenue, cost, and margin. So you tell me, how useful do you think this is? When I think about scenario comparison, I tend to think about it with respect to variance analysis. So if Copilot is suggesting scenario comparison, I'm not sure what it means by that, because to any finance or sales professional, scenario comparison will effectively mean understanding variance between actual, plan, and forecast. Moreover, these numbers are completely nonsensical, because if I have a multiple scenarios in my fact table, this is summing everything up. So I've never sold anything in 2.3 billion, because here we're looking at the product of my forecast, of my budget, of my actuals. So obviously, Copilot is not smart right now to understand how the model is wired and what are some of the common architectural design patterns for us to model financial and sales scenarios. And now I go back to my original question. How do I know if this is good or if this is not good? Who is this for? If I'm somebody who has no clue how to build reports, I have a little bit of Power BI experience where I could create like simple charts and other things. Is this enough to get me going? I don't know. If I'm a Power BI professional and I am somewhat seasoned and I have good experience with Power BI, do I find this useful? I don't know. As I kept experimenting with the tool, one of the questions that I was trying to understand was how well it does sales performance analysis. So again, this is something that it suggested it can do. It said, hey, let's build a sales performance analysis. So it generated this page. And what's interesting here is that we've all had to struggle with geospatial data on maps. So this particular company does not sell anything in Europe. So I would expect Copilot to look into my customer dimension, look into my geospatial attributes, and build this map in such a way that Odessa, St. Petersburg, and other cities are actually located in United States and not outside of the United States. But it seems that Copilot is just mechanically looking at one column at a time without putting things in the context, without inferring hierarchies. So if I am a not very sophisticated Power BI user and I'm trying to do my sales analysis and I look at this, I don't know if they would know how to fix this to move all of these bubbles back into United States of America. And by the way, I have played with Copilot using other data sets. I try to analyze HR data with it. I try to look at my supply chain data with it, defects analysis, market share analysis, digital marketing analysis. It does not seem like there is a lot of domain knowledge baked into the product right now. So in other words, it does not know which measures go together well, which measures are leading and lagging indicators, what are the drivers, and what people usually do giving a particular domain of analysis, and what would proper report or useful report look like to them. So these are my initial impressions of the Copilot report generation capabilities. Let's take a look how well it does with DAX. Okay, now let's click on Copilot in the DAX query view and ask some questions about our data. We'll start with a very simple query. What is my top products in 2022? So it's working on it. Took a few minutes. So it generated some DAX, and let's run this. And it said that my top product was biodegradable fabric softener sheets. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting and type in what was my product in 2022 and why, and run that. Now we have a new version of DAX. Let me run this. And it says the top product was biodegradable fabric softener sheets, and this product had the highest units sold in 2022. Now the question is this true? Well, if you look at the calculation, we can take a look at DAX here and see what it had to do to give me the answer. So the first thing that did, it created this filter and said, hey, I'm only interested in 2022. Cool. Then it's doing summarize columns based on this filter. It's creating another measure called total units, and it's summing my units here. Now, the problem with this calculation is that it does not understand that in sales I have multiple scenarios. I have my actuals, I have my budget. So this calculation is actually wrong. It does not understand how typical Power BI patterns are applied, and that very often in the same fact table we're going to have multiple slices and versions of the data. So this calculation is, in our case, nonsensical. And then I have to ask myself again, who is this calculation for? If this is for somebody who is not a DAX expert, then they're going to take this DAX calculation and use it elsewhere. And this calculation is completely wrong. It does not understand how our model is wired up. If this calculation is for Power BI expert, then I can write something as easy as using this Copilot that's going to give me exactly what I want. So for example, the reason this product had the highest sales in 22, I myself will actually add the amount of sales here, right? I would say this product sold XYZ, and therefore it had the highest units in 2022. So if we're trying to create a perception with not very technical, sophisticated users that, hey, go ahead, use the Copilot, and it's going to give you all the boost in productivity that you can expect, I'm expecting a lot of long faces where people generate completely nonsensical reports, go present it, and rely on data that's completely wrong and should not be depended on. Moreover, if you are not a Power BI expert, you should be extremely critical of everything that Copilot generates. If you cannot validate the quality of the calculation, you should not be using the calculation anywhere for your analysis. Let's ask another question. What was my most profitable product in 2022? Now I have margin and margin percent, calculations available, metrics available in this model. Let's see if it's going to use any of my metrics or if it's going to create its own. After I ran this piece of code, this is what I end up with. It says my top product is White Booster, and this product had the highest margin. What's interesting is that it did not show me what the margin was. And also, I think in most business scenarios, when people talk about the most profitable product, they're not looking at the total margin, they're looking at the margin percent. So again, I question how well does Copilot understand what actually matters given the domain of our analysis. So when we talk about profitable products, good products, bad products, market basket analysis, does it really understand what that means? Now, again, who is this for? If I'm a Power BI developer and I don't know financial and sales metrics very well, I'm going to take this calculation or this approach and happily apply it. If I am somebody who is not very well versed in sales analysis, I might take this calculation and say, hey, I know DAX, it looks pretty good. Here you go. This is how I understand profitability of the product. And I may not look very impressive when I show my analysis to the business end user, because to the business user, they will understand that I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I totally don't understand what they're trying to do with this report. Here's another one. Who is driving the most revenue in 2022? So there's many ways how this could be answered. By me implying who, I would expect the response to show me the top salesperson or sales team. Let's see what the calculation looks like. So if we review the calculation, then we see that who's driving the most sales is answered as a customer. This is better than maybe a scenario or some other completely unrelated dimension or lens. However, I think in most use cases, I would expect to see a human because I use who, and I would expect, as I said, either a salesperson or a sales team. And what's interesting is I no longer ask for why, right? I'm just saying who is driving the most revenue. So the reason column is not requested. So what we see that's good is there is a bit of a statefulness in this conversation. It memorized some of the prior questions and they remain available for the subsequent analysis. So these questions are not completely disconnected. However, for this particular question, the proper reason or the proper context, and I do appreciate that Copilot is thinking about the context for my answer. The proper context would be this is the number, or this is the, in this case, customer. I would expect the salesperson, but that's why, because this salesperson sold blah, 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 this much. Another way to say this would be this customer or this salesperson sold the biggest share of overall portfolio. If I'm trying to understand who is driving the most, then you could give me an absolute number or the share of the pie. But this reason here number one was not requested, number two is not very helpful. The next question is, what product improved the most in 2022? So I would expect either the answer to include year-over-year analysis for units, year-over-year analysis for sales, or ultimately year-over-year analysis for margin. Or it might say, hey, my margin percent has improved by this much in 22 versus 21. Let's see what it does. So that is actually the first calculation that worked perfectly as it's supposed to, because it took a look at my 2022, it found the right measure, sales year over year, and it calculated this table here. Again, I would expect it to give me either sales or units or margin. Margin would be preferred, and also I would expect it to think in terms of absolute and relative values. But this is actually something that's useful, and we can start working with that for sure. What we are going to do now is ask a really hard question. So all of the questions that I was asking right now were level 100 and were, I would say, very fundamental, very basic. So now let's ask a really hard question and see how well Copilot deals with that. So now I'm asking a $1 million question. This is ultimately the question that a CEO would ask of the analyst, and any tool that can answer this question commands ultimate respect. Let's see how well. I expect Copilot to fail. I don't know if there is any assistant or a tool in the world today that can answer this question based on this data set, but let's see if this is something Copilot can even tackle, if it's going to give up or give us something weird. So I haven't done this before, so I'm genuinely curious to see what the output will look like. As expected, Copilot was not able to do anything with that. It says, I am not able to update the query. Please provide more information. So now, because it's asking for me to provide more information, I'm providing basically the blueprint for how to go and tease out the approach. What I'm saying is, in order to answer whether my profitability, what happened to my profitability as my market share grows, I'm saying, hey, take a look at what happened in 2022, look into my sales, look into my market share change in 2022, then take a look at the change in margin, and then do a correlation analysis and see if they're positive or negative to understand how change in market share is driving my profitability. Let's see if my clarifications helped. So there's a couple of things that are impressive in this calculation. Number one is, yes, it's doing 2022. Number two, it's for some reason not using my measure, it's using sales column, so that's not that impressive. Number three, it's actually figured out that for market share, it's not that hard to figure out. There's only one numeric column in a market share table. So it figured out that you need to be looking at category units. And then what it's doing is giving me this row that consists of these three measures. So it says total sales is this, total market share is this, total margin is this. That is not going to be useful to answer my question. So it did a couple of cool things, and that's pretty amazing. However, it definitely is nowhere close to understand how to answer sophisticated CEO level questions that most junior data analysts would know how to do this. They may not know the deck skills to do this, but they would know exactly where to go and what information to find and what calculations would look like to be able to provide that answer. This data set is perfectly laid out and has literally all of the measures and calculations available. All of that is there in a very unambiguous way to be able to answer this question. Again, this is not a knock on the Microsoft. This is more of a knock on overall idea of copilots and assistants and their overall capabilities. The last thing is I'm going to use a feature of Copilot that can actually explain what a DEX calculation does. So here I have part of my price volume mix calculation that does the year-over-year price impact analysis. Let me run this and see if Copilot can explain the logic behind this calculation. So let's see if I can make this bigger. I can't, unfortunately. Okay, so I think it did a really good job, actually. So it says, hey, this DEX query you provided is calculating the year-over-year price impact on sales. Here's the breakdown of what it does. It says it's creating a new table and it's trying to exclude all of the products that did not have sales last year or do not have sales this year. And then it's doing some pretty good analysis and kind of telling us how this works. Now, I already did a video where I use Azure OpenAI to take DEX and convert it into the description so that you can create pretty amazing and user-friendly data dictionaries. So I was able to generate very similar explanation for a DEX calculation myself using Python and Azure OpenAI, but still I think if there is one thing where copilots are going to be extremely useful and actually do a very good job, it's generating basically simple DEX and also explaining DEX back to people who are trying to understand what the calculation actually does. Okay, so this went way too long and I'm definitely not looking forward to editing this video, but what are my final thoughts? Yes, Copilot in Power BI and Power BI in Fabric or in notebooks or in Power BI desktop is amazing. The sheer fact of me being able to just talk to the tool taking my input, generating DEX that is for me somewhat useful. So for somebody who knows DEX, somewhat useful. It understands the logic behind DEX calculation. So the power of Gen AI and OpenAI that we see in this Copilot is obvious. What is also obvious is that Copilot today does not understand the domain very well. So I am not seeing, I think it's doing a good job when we talk about sales, saying, hey, year over year is comparing this year to last year. So it understands basic concepts. However, I don't think it understands the sales analysis very well from the domain perspective. It also does not seem to understand some of the common patterns that we use to model our data in Power BI. In other words, I don't believe that Copilot is looking into how our data is tied together, what the relationships are, and for example, it doesn't understand that in fact table you could have multiple slices, actuals, budget, and so forth. So it seems to be operating on a surface level without taking the plumbing of the model into consideration. To double click on the point 1, it doesn't seem like Copilot understands which metrics are important given the problem domain, and it does not understand how different metrics are related to each other. So I'm not sure how well Copilot understands the role of cost or revenue in a margin and what's the leading and lagging indicator in this relationship. Lastly, it doesn't seem to understand hierarchical nature of data very well. So specifically, I was not very impressed with it treating geospatial data. If it does show the map back to the user, I would expect my St. Petersburg to be in Florida and not in Russia. And now we're back to the most important question. How do we know what good it looks like? Who is this feature for? Is this for a beginner Power BI developer? Is this for a storytelling person who has some Power BI expertise? Is this something for a seasoned developer who is looking to jumpstart a bunch of different reports and then just do the tweaks at the end? Ultimately, what does success look like? And ultimately, does Microsoft even test Copilot on meaningful and impactful realistic data scenarios? Or are they just trying to analyze and explore simple data sets located in a single file? So my apologies for how long this video was. If you actually made it through, congratulations and thank you for the time that you spent on this video. If you found this enjoyable and useful, almost 40 minutes of it, then I would appreciate the like and the follow and subscribe. Next week, we will most likely be back into our price value mix cost analysis, doing more deep dive into sales analytics. So see you soon. Bye.